Hello friends, today I am going to reveal some true facts of ocean circulation. But first of all, I request you to please share and subscribe my channel for getting my informative true facts videos uninterrupted. Now, ocean circulation. Geostrophic currents. As water moves, it is constantly deflected by the Coriolis effect. This effect pushes water into a hill in the center of the jar. It is about 1 meter high in the center of the Atlantic. Nevertheless, it is a hill and water runs downhill. There is a balance between the pushing in of the Coriolis effect and the flowing out of the gravity, which deflects the right in the north hemisphere, which keeps the whole thing spinning as a geostrophic current. So once the winds get the jar moving, they are somewhat self-perpetuating. Gulf Stream. Gulf Stream. Gulf Stream is best study of the ocean currents. Gulf Stream, like streams on land, bubbles. These bubbles are known as eddies. These bubbles are known as eddies. The bubbles often wobbles so far that the full gob of Gulf Stream water pinches off from the stream and heads south or north. These are known as rings. This is yet another way by which warmth is sent from the Gulf Stream to the northeast coast of North America. The outward bubble takes cold water from off the coast of the New England and sends it to the center of the North Atlantic jar, an area known as the Sargasso Sea. The inward bubble takes warm water and sends it up to the coast of New England. The Ekman spiral. When wind blows over the surface of the water, we expect it to drag the water along with it in the same direction. I will repeat this. When wind blows over the surface of the water, we expect it to drag the water along with it in the same direction. However, it doesn't. You may have noticed that the trade winds which move the equatorial currents are blowing diagonally across the map, but the water is moving horizontally. Now what is going on? The Coriolis effects again. The trade winds blow from the northeast in the northern hemisphere. The water they drag along is deflected to the right. Now, this water is moving is a given direction and it drags the water just beneath it with it. The water just beneath the surface is also deflected to the right. This water drags water beneath it, which is also deflected to the right. This effect continues with deeper and deeper water for 100 to 200 meters until friction stops the motion. But at the bottom of this dragging and deflecting, water can be moving in the opposite direction of wind flows. The average directions of flows for the current is about 45 degrees to the right of the direction of the wind. Surface winds. The surface winds are the ones which blow over the surface of the ocean and causes ocean currents. The trade winds push North Atlantic water westward, forming the North Equatorial Current. This current runs into the West Indies and then turns northward. Caribbean Islands northward. Warm waters from the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico join this water, and these currents from the Gulf Stream, which moves along the west side of the Atlantic. Notice that the Gulf Stream becomes deflected to the right. In addition to the Coriolis effect, the Gulf Stream begins to flow under the influence of the westerlies, which push this current across the North Atlantic. The North Atlantic current runs into northwest Europe, the British Isles, and is deflected to the right. North Atlantic current runs into the northwest Europe, the British Isles, and is deflected to the right. Now the water flows southward at the Canary Current to complete the North Atlantic jar. Part of the North Atlantic was split off and flows northwest, forming the Norway Current. Part of the North Atlantic splits off and flows northward, forming the Norway Current. Part of the water flows between Greenland and Canada into the Arctic Ocean. It comes back southward as the Labrador Current, bringing iceberg that carved off western Greenland with it. Another part flows between Iceland and Scandinavia into the Arctic Ocean and comes back out in the Atlantic between Greenland and the Iceland and the East Greenland Current. Again, bringing icebergs from East Greenland with it. Again, bringing iceberg from the East Greenland with it. These branches of the North Atlantic gyre are what sunk various ships in the North Atlantic. These branches of the North Atlantic gyre are what sunk various ships in the North Atlantic. There is a similar gyre in the South Atlantic, but it flows counterclockwise because the Coriolis effect deflects the motion to the left in the southern hemisphere. The trade winds blows the waters westward across the South Atlantic as the South Equatorial Current. This water runs into South America and is deflected to the left or south to form the Brazil Current. This water runs into South America and is deflected to the left or south to form the Brazil Current. The Brazil Current is the South Atlantic's equivalent to the Gulf Stream. As it flows southward, the Brazil Current is deflected to the left to form South Atlantic Current moving eastward towards Africa. When it runs into Africa, it is deflected left or northward and moves along the African coast as the Venezuela Current to complete the gyre. When it runs into Africa, it is deflected left or northward and moves along the African coast as the Venezuela Current to complete the gyre. Currents of the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Ocean also has a gyre in the northern and the southern part. In the northern hemisphere, the trade winds push the water westward across towards the Philippines as the North Equatorial Current. I'm going to repeat this. In the northern hemisphere, the trade winds push the water westward across towards the Philippines as the North Equatorial Current. This is deflected to the right and becomes the Kuroshio Current, which is the North Pacific equivalent to the Gulf Stream. It flows past Japan. The studies push on the current on the Coriolis effects and deflects into the right across the North Pacific Current. It runs into North America and is deflected right to become the California Current and complete the North Pacific gyre. As in the Atlantic, there are a couple of branches northward forming the Alaska Current and the Kamchatka Current. Why the water along the west coast of the US is coming down from the north where it has been chilling out, it takes a bit. This is why the Pacific coast is cold for swimming. In the southern hemisphere, you can follow the South Equatorial Current to East Australian Current, across to the South Pacific Current and then to the Pelu Current. The Pacific and Atlantic Oceans have an equatorial counter current to keep water from piling up on the west side of the ocean. Warm equatorial water bathes the northeast coast of the Australia, but cold polar water bathes the west coast of Australia. This is why there is so much more reef growth in the Great Barrier Reef on the east side of Australia than on its west. This is why there is so much more reef growth, the Great Barrier Reef on the east side of Australia than on its west. The current of the southern oceans. The southern oceans is the water around Antarctica, the continent at the South Pole. The southern ocean is actually the southern ends of the Atlantic, the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Because it has a unique current system, most oceanographers recognize it as a separate ocean. It has little connections with the gyre of any other ocean, although it does downfall and circulate in the subsurfaces back to the equator. There is a lot of other things going, but the one is the west wind drifts. El Nino, southern oscillation, that is ENSO. Periodic elevation of sea surface temperature in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. A strengthening of the equatorial counter current develop as a result of a pressure change that reduces the southeastern trade winds. With the trade winds weakened, water that is normally pushed into the western Pacific by the wind flows eastward. When the trade winds weakened, water that is normally pushed into the western Pacific by the wind flows eastward. The warmer water overrides the typical cold water of the eastern Pacific and deepens the thermocline. A very deep layer of warm water accumulates in the typically cool eastern Pacific. A very deep layer of warm water accumulates in the typically cool eastern Pacific. ENSO effect has a major effect on weather, especially in the regions bordering the Pacific. Hurricanes in the South Pacific, heavy rain in Eastern Pacific, especially Western South America, droughts in Western Pacific and Australia, droughts in Eastern Africa, and also have been correlated with El Nino. Normal conditions are stronger than normal, La Nina, colder than normal temperatures, La Nina, L-A-N-I-N-A. Normal conditions are stronger than normal, colder than normal temperature, a strong current with a strong upwelling. Deep ocean currents, DOC, deep ocean currents. Density differences together with the winds are the principal factors determining the ocean currents. Winds are the primary driving force of the surface circulation, which is also called wind-driven circulation. Winds are the primary driving force of the surface circulation, which is also called as wind-driven circulation. Density differences drive the deep or vertical circulation of the oceans. The density of seawater is controlled by temperature and salinity. So the deep circulation is also called the thermohaline circulation. The density of seawater is controlled by temperature and salinity. So the deep circulation is also called the thermohaline circulation. Temperature differences as small as a few hundredths of a degree and salinity differences of a few parts in 100,000 can be important. Both temperature and salinity are conservative properties of seawater. That is, they are determined by processes occurring at the surface. Formation of deep water masses. Deep waters are generally formed in higher latitudes because of cooling and thermal contraction. They then sink to level of a neutral buoyancy, spreads out and slowly return to surface over hundreds of years. Mediterranean intermediate waters, MIW. Saline, greater than 38%, relatively warm water found in Mediterranean, flowing out through Gibraltar and sinking to 1,000 miles in the Atlantic. North Atlantic deep water, NADW. Formerly winter cooling of upwelling saline water around Iceland. Piles up to the reach depth and flows out southward, rising against that Antarctica divergence. Antarctica intermediate water, AAIW. Antarctica intermediate water forms at the Antarctica polar front and currents pile up water produces convergence. This is not as cold or saline as NADW, so it stays above it, moving northward. Antarctica bottom water, Antarctic bottom water, AABW, densest and most widespread deep water mass found in the Atlantic, Pacific and Indian Ocean. Antarctic bottom water, I'm going to repeat this, the densest and most widespread deep water mass found in the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean. Formed by cooling in the Polyneas, areas free of ice around Antarctica. Freezing of ice increases salinity and density of this water. Equatorial circulation. Intertropical convergence zone, ITC, climatic equator. North and south equatorial currents run east to west, driven by trade winds. Equatorial counter current runs west to east within ITC. Equatorial undercurrent occurs at a depth of about 50 to 100 meter on equator, runs east to west. There is divergence and hence unveiling at the equator. In my next video, I will give some more details of Indian Oceans. Thanks.